Welcome to the second part of Bounty for Beginners. Part 1 gives a basic overview to participating in Bounty. The link for that video is in the description below this one. In the first video we went over the basics of Bounty, where our bounty comes from and how we secure it. Now let's talk about how to pull it all together and secure as many points as we can. This is where lower to mid levels need to use strategy while participating in the event. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to a mid or low level that's participating in Bounty is to always be worth less to the bigger fish. You don't want to be in a position where you have a whole lot of unsecured bounty that's just begging for somebody to come along and take it. The way we get around losing large amounts of bounty is by securing as much bounty as we can as quickly as possible. If you're a mid or a low level player, when it comes to bounty, timing is everything. You want to make sure that you reach as many of those low-level checkpoints as quickly as possible. One of the ways that you can do this is by delaying the start of Bounty until right before you would receive a timed grant. If you join Bounty right when it starts, or when it's a long time until the next grant drops, you would get the 800 grant for opting in, and then you would be sitting there with 800 points just waiting for somebody to come along and take it, and you're a long way from the first checkpoint. What you can do is delay your start until just before you are due to get a timed grant. Does not matter which one, just that you're due to get one soon. If you delay your start, you join the event and then you're awarded the initial 800 grant for opting in. Then you get the second 800 grant for your timed grant when it drops. And then, if you can have somebody on standby or shout out on sector chat for a couple of gunboat hits, then you'll get 2 times the defense bonus. So all of those amounts added up together gives you the 2,000 bounty points. You can do this very quickly. As long as the checkpoints haven't changed, then that means you've made the first 2,000 checkpoint, and those 2,000 bounty points are now secured and protected, and nobody can take those away from you. Another option is to work the delayed start with another player that's doing bounty that can be on standby and ready to give you a bubble. Now you may be thinking, well, if somebody hits me, they're going to take my bounty. Remember, the only way players can take bounty from you is if you are worth more unsecured bounty to them. If you've got a player that's got 5,000 in unsecured bounty and you're sitting there with 800 in unsecured bounty, they can hit you until the cows come home and you're not going to lose any of your bounty. What you do in this scenario is start the bounty shortly before a timed grant and get the initial 800 grant for opting in. As soon as you do that, you have somebody give you a bubble. This now gives you up to 4 hours of bubble time to work with. You will also be getting your first timed grant, so that now gives you the other 800 points. So now you can go out and hit map targets to get that last 400 points to reach that first checkpoint. Of course, you want to make sure that you have your fleets launched before you do this, or at least move your dock so it's not hit by the person giving you the bubble. You can use a similar strategy throughout the rest of Bounty to keep reaching those checkpoints. Work with somebody that's participating in Bounty that has more unsecured bounty than you. They can give you bubbles just before the grant times so that you have up to 4 hours bubble protection time to go out and hit map targets to make the checkpoints. Using our 2,000 point example, if you get the 800 grant and you're under bubble protection, you now only need 1,200 points to reach that checkpoint. You can now go out and hit map targets while you're under bubble protection. If you do have a base or fleet and you're confident in using it, remember there are other player bases out there to hit as well. You can be lucky enough to find a player base that you can beat that will give you enough bounty to instantly reach a checkpoint and secure your bounty. Remember, you don't lose any bounty for failing in a base. You want to plan around your timed grants and missed grants. Remember in the beginning we talked about how if you missed a timed grant then it's held in storage until you log back in again. What you may not be aware of is that if you miss that grant, it isn't actually applied to your base or your bounty points total until you log back into the game. If you time when you get back onto the game, you can go ahead and get the missed grant that was being held for you, and then you can get the next timed grant that's awarded, and then you can work with the player to give you a bubble and you've now got 1600 points. Plus you've got bubble protection, which now gives you time to go out and hit map targets. Or, if you've got your missed grant and you're getting ready to be awarded the second one, you can then go ahead and have somebody hit your base with a gunboat a couple of times to give you the defense grants to get you to the checkpoint. Remember that you can get 1,000 points a day from just those defense bonuses. Once you've reached your desired checkpoints, you can then relax until the daily timer resets and you can start the process again. We just talked through some scenarios, and in those we talked about hitting map targets, or the player replica bases. These are called your opponent bases, and they spawn around the DRAC bases. These are the bases that are copies of actual player bases. There are 3 different levels for points, and there are different points payouts for each level. You can reach checkpoints pretty quickly by hitting just a few of these targets for points. One of the ways to maximize the point return on hitting the map targets is to hit as many targets as possible. The most efficient way to do this is to not waste time looking for targets you can hit. You can relay jump to the furthest sector in your world, then hit any targets that you can around the nearest DRAC base. As you complete the targets at the first DRAC base, then head northwest back towards your sector, hitting the targets along the line of DRAC bases until you get back to your sector. You can see from the image that the DRAC bases are all in the same position in each sector, and they're all in a line. Working that line will save you from hunting around multiple random DRAC bases for targets you can hit. Once you're back in your sector, you can repeat this, or if you're feeling frisky, you can head to the lowest sector in your world and do the same in reverse. I've seen many lower level players make multiple checkpoints by hitting a bunch of these bases while under bubble protection. Because these are copies of player bases, a word of caution. You can walk into a level 85 replica base and get a swift kick in the rear end, and you can also hit a level 110 replica base and end up walking through it. These are copies of player bases. All bases are different, and the level number on the outside of the base does not necessarily match what's inside the base. Couple things to keep in mind when hitting the player replica bases. First, these bases don't bubble. This means that you can go in multiple times and use multiple fleets to pick the base apart. You can retreat as necessary and bring in different fleets. If you're using a couple of muddle gluts or sin gluts to hit bases, watch your submerge timer because you can hit retreat right before you surface. You can then bring your subs back in and then go ahead and finish out the base. The other thing to be aware of is that these bases have to be completely killed for 100% in order to get the bounty points. That means that you're going to have to go around the outside and clear out any oil rigs or docks or anything else that's sitting outside of the main area. If you're using older fleets, or if you're using submarine fleets, pay attention to see if the OP has one of the new cannons on top. These will hurt older fleets and some sub-fleets if you're not careful. Don't be afraid to drag around a gunboat or even an old submarine fleet to use to peek these bases before you hit them so that you can save damage. Don't be afraid to try different fleets. In the last bounty there were people out there that were using Punishers to take down lower bases. I also saw folks using Icebreakers, Skyfires, and even their FM Zealous mono fleets. If you've got a couple of fleets out there and you can find some of the lower bases, go ahead and give them a go. These are also a great way to practice your base hitting skills. First, no one is watching. You can retreat and re-enter if necessary, and you're hitting actual copies of player bases. Don't be afraid to hit some bases that you would not normally hit in order to get some extra experience. Well, that concludes our introduction to bounty videos. I hope these videos have given you a better understanding of how bounty works, as well as some of the strategies that you can use to maximize and secure your bounty points. You can use these strategies to get you enough points to get something good in the next bounty event. Thank you very much for your time.